After 7 years of consistent calisthenics training, I've built more muscle than I've ever built in the gym. While most people think that calisthenics is just good for getting lean, doing ab workouts, or flashy skills, but not actually for building muscle. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why calisthenics actually builds more muscle than you think, and how you can use it to actually get big. So yes, 7 years ago, I started my calisthenics journey when I was 14 years old, and I did this because I did not have a gym. I wanted to go to the gym so bad, but I couldn't go yet. When I was 14 years old, the local gym actually did not accept me yet, so they had to ask multiple owners of the gym or whatever if they could actually allow me to train in there. And the moment when they actually said yes, but first with some instructions from some type of personal trainer over there, I actually started going to the gym. But before that, I did not have a gym. And even in the gym, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing with the weights that were there, so I was just doing my push-ups, pull-ups, and dips. And that actually led me to creating my absolute dream physique without ever having to focus heavily on weight training. And I totally believe that you can be that individual too. That is exactly why I created the Jacked by Calisthenics Blueprint program. Now, this is my personal program full of modules that you need to go from skinny to jacked within 6 months time. So if you want to be a part of that and join the 50 other members who are inside right now working extremely hard, go to the top link in the description, join right now, and get started right away. Trust me, it would not be disappointing you. Let's get into chapter number 1, because chapter number 1 is very important to understand, and it's about the myth about calisthenics and muscle growth. Why is it that so many individuals think that calisthenics and muscle growth just don't really go together? Even though we know, intrinsically know, that calisthenics builds great physiques. It has built my physique, the members inside of my blueprint, my friends, every single person who I've seen take calisthenics extremely serious, especially for muscle growth, actually gets the muscle growth that they want, and they really look how they want to look. So why do you think it isn't possible? Listen, it's very, very simple. When you treat calisthenics like in hypertrophy sports, where you really want to focus on building muscle, trust me, bro, do you think that now all of a sudden you're not going to build muscle? That's fucking stupid. Of course you're going to build muscle. The thing is, you need to build muscle with calisthenics if you're actually focused on calisthenics muscle building style training. It is very obvious. If you focus on it, you're going to get it. There's no other way to go about it. If you focus on calisthenics muscle building style training, you're going to build muscle. But there's a couple of things that are required if you actually want to make that change. Number 1, your mindset need to be changed. Your mindset is right now, calisthenics is a totally different sport than any other muscle building style training out there. At the same time, yes it is, but also it is not. You can use calisthenics in a way to build muscle just like weights, just like powerlifting, just like any other muscle building sport out there. The only thing is, you have to apply an hypertrophy mindset to it, which is also what I've explained in my previous video. When you're not going to do this, this is also the moment where you're not going to build muscle. If you treat calisthenics like the average calisthenics athletes, especially beginner, who start calisthenics doing a bunch of push-ups and they build their endurance up quite a bit, but after that they start to practice the handstand and are going to practice the front lever, and then 6 years later they wonder why they haven't really built muscle. They wonder why they still kind of look the same compared to when they started. Why? Because they were not focused on calisthenics muscle building style training. Even though their mind was like, I really want to build muscle, their training was doing something completely different to their body. And that is exactly what you see with most calisthenics beginners, and that is exactly the reason why they stay stuck in the same physique for life. So I'm going to show you exactly how to prevent that with chapter number 2. How calisthenics can be used for progressive overload without any type of weights. Now listen, you have to understand, in calisthenics, the progressive overload patterns are going to be way different than with weights. Obviously, when we enter the gym, you have a bunch of weights in front of you, and you can just go heavier every single week, possibly, if you're actually able to increase the progressive overload stimulus and to create more muscle mass. Obviously, right? That is how we progressively overload in the gym. More advanced athletes know that that's not the only way, but that is the most reliable way of going about it. In calisthenics, it works a little bit different. It could actually work the same. We could actually go from a bodyweight push-up to adding a 5-pound plate on our back and doing push-ups now with a 5-pound plate. I understand. It's possible. We can also apply the same progressive overload strategies used with weights to calisthenics. But there are way more reliable options out there, because most calisthenics athletes don't don't have the weights at home, or they simply don't want to use weights because they first want to just get better at the sport calisthenics in and of itself, which is something that I promote heavily on this channel, and which is something that I promote to any beginner out there right now who is trying to build muscle with calisthenics. So what are these more effective tactics available in the calisthenics training space for you to gain muscle? Well, when it comes to progressive overload, we are not just going to focus on increasing the weight that we have upon our body. We're going to change up the leverages and change up the tempos and change up the variations in order to build more muscle. Now, there are plenty of ways to do so, but the quickest change that you can right now make into your training routine, whether you're a beginner or you're already kind of advanced but you don't know how to further progress, is to change the leverages. So going from a regular push-up to a diamond push-up is already progressive overload. You do understand that, right? Going from a normal push-up to a decline push-up is already progressive overload. Even though you're doing the same amount of reps, the same amount of rest periods, the same amount of maybe weight on your back if you're using weighted calisthenics, or the same amount of hand grips, just using a different leverage. So just using, for example, a decline version of the push-up or a deficit push-up where you have deeper range of motion can already progressively overload your muscles in order to grow bigger. That is exactly what you're going to be doing at first if you're a calisthenics athlete trying to build muscle. Now, the second thing is, as I said, tempo. Tempo is something that you want to change in order to actually increase the tension on an exercise. So when you're doing pull-ups and you're trying to increase the tension, go slower on the negative on the way down, or hold it at the top for a little bit, which is also a tempo change. And number three is very, very simple, is changing up the variation. Now, I kind of already talked about that. Going from a normal push-up to a decline push-up is already a variation change. A pull-up variation is everything different than a normal pull-up. That's already a variation of a pull-up. Same thing with the push-up, same thing with the dip, same thing with a lunge or squat or a handstand variation. Same thing with upside down work. Something that is different than the original exercise you started with is a variation. And you want to switch variations from time to time in order to keep shocking your body so that you can actually grow bigger each and every single week. And that is exactly what you want to do. Now listen, I actually think that in calisthenics it's more effective to progressively overload than with weights. Why do I think that? That's because weights are actually easier for the mind to progressive overload. Why? Because with weights, we can make the smallest jump possible, right? For example, with weights, we can go ahead and grab instead of a 22-pound dumbbell, we can go ahead and grab a 25-pound dumbbell or whatever, right? We can go ahead and grab instead of grabbing a 10 kg dumbbell, go to a 12 kg dumbbell. Very, very small change. Or when you're using a barbell exercise on an overhead press, for example, you can add a 1 kg on each side if you have those plates, and that's it. We can make the smallest changes possible, and that way we can keep it easy for ourselves. So if you don't have that working hard type of mindset and mentality, you're most likely going to be cutting short on your training routine, and you could actually be progressing faster if you just approach your training a little bit harder. But with calisthenics, this is not possible. We cannot change our body weights that easily as with a barbell or with a dumbbell or with a resistance band. We can't change it. So when you're doing, for example, a pull-up and you're doing the original pull-up, the normal pull-up that you're always used to, and you want to go from a normal pull-up to a wide grip pull-up, that difference is going to be huge. And if you were not ready for that wide grip pull-up yet, then you need to be sticking to the regular pull-up for a bit longer, because apparently there is more to be gained in the pull-up just yet before you actually move on to the wide grip. You cannot cheat in strength. When you progress in calisthenic strength, when you go from a weighted chin-up on the rings with 22 pounds and then from 22 pounds to 25 pounds, which seems a small increase, but it's huge. That's real strength. Let's say your 1 rep max chin-up on the weighted chin-up on rings, or the 1 rep max dip on rings is 90 pounds, 40 kg, and you go from 90 pounds to 100 pounds, that's crazy. Even though it's only a 10-pound increase, which is like what, 4 or 5 kg or something, that increase is real noticeably crazy strength. With weights, we can cheat on ourselves so easily. You could, for example, grab a 10 kg dumbbell, do it for 12 curls all the way to failure, but then next week you're gonna grab a 12 kg dumbbell, which is very good. That's progressive overload, but the step is not significant as opposed to calisthenics where you're making an entire variation switch. That's why calisthenics cannot be cheated with, bro. You cannot play with it. It is such a difficult style of training that whenever you switch from a variation to another variation, this is real crazy, a big amount of strength increase that you have just made. That is why people build muscle so quickly, especially if you're a beginner. Now let's go into chapter number 4, the secret advantages that calisthenics has. First advantage that I want to talk about that also ties back to to what I was talking about, when you're a beginner, this is the highest ROI that you're ever going to experience from doing calisthenics. Why? Everything that you're going to do with calisthenics is going to be hard. It's going to be tough. When you're extremely skinny and weak, calisthenics is going to be difficult as fuck. When you're extremely fat, calisthenics is going to be extremely difficult for you. But that is where your advantage lies. With weight training, we don't have this because we can pick a weight that feels comfortable for us. But with calisthenics, a push-up stays a damn push-up. A pull-up stays a damn pull-up. You cannot change that shit, bro. You cannot change a pull-up or decrease your body weight unless you lose weight, of course, if you were fat before, but you cannot change it. So it's way more difficult as opposed to weightlifting. So when you go ahead and grab a dumbbell of 10 kg and you say, oh, that was kind of too heavy, you just grab an 8 kg dumbbell. But with calisthenics, if you want to try and go ahead and do a pull-up and you say, that was too hard, I'm sorry, you can't do a pull-up no more. That pull-up is gone. You're gonna have to do regressions. And of course, that is something that you could do, but the pull-up stays the pull-up. So you cannot make the pull-up easier. The pull-up is the pull-up, that's what it is. So that's why if you're very weak at first, or you're very overweight, or you haven't done it before, then calisthenics is great for you because the more difficult it is, the more your muscles are going to be working towards muscle growth. And that is exactly why I actually grew insanely fast when I just started calisthenics. And yes, I have plateaued multiple times because I was in multiple phases where I did not know what I was doing. But after some time, I actually did know what I was doing because I was programming correctly. And when I was programming correctly, I actually started to gain insane amount of progress. Same thing as people do in the gym, or same thing as people do with street lifting or powerlifting. So you just have to make sure that you're going extremely hard on yourself. Don't make it easy. That's it. The second advantage that we have with calisthenics is that we're able to recover quicker if we focus on body weight training. Now, we have calisthenics differences, right? We have weighted calisthenics as well. We have street lifting. We have high rep. We are right now concerned with going from the stage that you are right now to an advanced stage. I understand that at the beginning stage of calisthenics, you're not going to be doing weighted calisthenics yet. So if you're that beginner, then the beautiful thing about calisthenics is you can actually train with a higher frequency, possibly training your muscles even 3 times a week with the right amount of volume and intensity, and still be able to recover to maintain that 3 times per week frequency. Why? Because you're not straining as hard as you would do with very, very heavy weight at first yet. Now I am straining because I'm more advanced and I use weighted calisthenics. I use very hard variations and I really treat it as a muscle building sport. But when I was first just starting out, I could actually train for a lot of times a week and still be okay. Why? Because my joints were becoming super durable from the light body weighted training that I was doing with my exercises. I was doing my push-ups, my pull-ups, my dips very frequently, but not in a extreme heavy type style. I was just doing the basic variations for a certain amount of reps, pretty high reps also. And in that process, I was actually getting my joints, bones, and ligaments extremely strong, which has now resulted me into actually training calisthenics to a new level and next level for me to gain more muscle with it. So as a beginner, I actually advise you to do more reps and more sets at first. Why? Because as a beginner, you don't know properly yet how to actually push your body and training. If you're a total beginner, you don't know your body yet. You don't know what your limits are. You don't know what your weak points are. You don't know how to properly push a set yet. So with that being said, training a little bit more and more reps will actually cause you to practice more automatically, right? And with that, you're going to get to know your body a little bit more so that you now can transfer into more low volume style training and high intensity, doing like 2 to 3 sets all the way to failure. But as a beginner, don't do that yet because you don't know what failure is. You can say to yourself, oh, I went to failure, without you actually knowing that your muscles were capable of producing a lot more strength. And that's usually the case. When you're a total beginner, you don't know how much your body is actually capable of pushing. You don't know how to properly push a last bicep curl or a last chin up or a last push up. You don't know how to properly do that yet. So I do advise you for the first months of training to just focus on doing the reps properly. That's it. And when you have done that, now you're going to transfer to low volume training and doing more sets to failure so that you now can actually really strain your muscles and grow them more and more and more. And that is something that I exactly teach in the Jacked by Calisthenics Blueprint program, which is top link in the description, bro. If you want to go from skinny to jacked within 6 months as a calisthenics beginner or even advanced, but if you're just a young guy who is looking to build muscle with calisthenics in their 20s or 30s, go to the top link in the description. This is exactly where you want to be. As you can see, multiple members are already on the wave that I'm on, creating routines that are perfect for muscle building calisthenics. So if you want to know this style and how to do it properly, top link in the description. I'll see you inside. Now let's go into the last chapter, and that is going to be how to structure calisthenics for hypertrophy. Now, the best way, in my opinion, of doing it is by focusing on 3 total routines that you're going to repeat for twice a week. So you're going to do 6 days of training. Now, for a lot of people, that's a little bit too much. You could also have 3 days of training with just having 3 days of training. So 3 routines that you're going to repeat for 1 time per week. So 3 days a week. You can do that, but you can also do my way, which is 3 routines per week, twice a week. But the style of training is going to be a little bit differently because you're going to be focusing on hypertrophy, right? Now, the thing that I want you to do is the structure of your workout should be very, very simple as possible, because that way you can track progress with your reps, your tempo, and your range of motion, and your leverages, variations, stuff like that. When you write that down and you only have 3 workout routines with a couple of exercises, let's say 2 to 3 per muscle group, that way for next week, you can go ahead and get into your training knowing exactly how to progress. You understand? So you have to write down and memorize however you want to do it. I prefer writing down. Write down everything that you have done in your previous workout so that you now know exactly what to change and how to progress and how to push yourself more and more and more. What this is going to do is this is going to teach you to just train harder. And when you train harder, exactly, you're going to build more muscle. That is exactly what progressively overloading actually is. Now, if you want my personal help on this, again, go to the top link in the description, because the moment you join, I'm going to send you a message and we're just going to talk about training, man, so that we can actually get you from skinny to jacked with the modules that are recorded inside. So with that being said, I'll see you inside. And as always, watch this video right here, because in this video, I'm going to be showing you what 3 routines you need to exactly be following to build muscle with calisthenics.